Chapter 1. Chapter Summary. Policing in the United States. Now, this chapter talks about some of the key issues facing policing or facing law enforcement in today's society. It discusses the concept of policing, but it also examines the degree to which police entities have a mandate in society, at least in American society. The chapter examines a few issues related to the difficulties that often arise when we're trying to generalize about law enforcement in the scope of their function, because no two police entities are the same. So it is hard to generalize as to what policing is about based on understandings about one particular police entity. So further down the road, the chapter talks about the levels of police in the United States and discuss some of the concerns that people have about the police in this country. In the end, the chapter talks about other types of police entities and their function. So what's important to understand is that whenever we're talking about the police, there are questions as to what the police are, what functions police should hold in society, and the degree to which police entities have an important role in society. First of all, we have to understand that the term police itself sort of implicates the reality, the function of the profession. The term police is derived from the Greek words polis and politoion, and those terms refer to a citizen who participates in the affairs of a city or a state. And this is a good way of sort of describing the role of police or contemporary police in today's society. So in general, a police officer is a person who is especially designated to get involved in the affairs of a city or a state. In other words, a police entity or a police officer represents the state. He represents the sheer brute force and the capacity of the state to use force, to use persuasion, to use coercion against the citizenry. That is what the police embodies. At least that is what the police as an entity embodies. And police officers embody that reality as well. So a police officer is a citizen who is actively involved in the affair of the state. And what that means is that the police officer is especially designated to or appointed to apprehend, to arrest, to detain, to control those who have, in one way or another, violated the rights of others in society. And the police in turn the officer in turn has the obligation to bring that individual before other especially designated entities or citizens, such as prosecutors and judges, whom in turn will determine whether further action is warranted against the person who violated the rights of another. Okay, so some of the functions of police entities include maintain order, prevent chaos in society. Okay, they are supposed to enforce the law. They are also there to prevent crimes. But there's a problem. When the police are doing their job, they often face pushbacks from the society or from the community they serve. Because on the one hand, the police are needed. There's a need for protection. There's a need for service. But on the other hand, there's also a need for freedom, for personal space, personal privacy. And there's the tendency to tell the police, hey, we need you to protect us, but we don't want you to get into our personal affairs. So the police found themselves in this situation where on the one hand they're needed, but on the other hand they're not. So it's a delicate balance. But in general, the police have a duty to intervene in the affairs of private citizens. The police can detain, they can arrest anyone so long as that person is in violation of an existing law, a law that is in effect. Then the police can intervene to restore order, to prevent a crime if that's what's happening, or to enforce the law if the law has been violated in some ways. Again, when the police intervene in certain situations, that often creates suspicions. Why are the police intervening? Are they doing this for themselves, or are they doing it against this particular group? And that's where you often find the argument that the police are sort of racist, the police are this, the police are that, so the police are there to sort of get rid of certain groups. Now, the understanding is that the police are rooted in certain social issues in America, which are also connected with race and racial disparities in this country. So the police, believe it or not, they embody that as well. So when you see a police officer, there's also the tendency to see somebody who represents a particular social ideal, social ideology, and people often push back against that. So we have to take that into account whenever we're trying to understand the police. The bottom line is that citizens want the police to get involved to fix their problems. They want the police to be there when they need help. They want the police to sort of serve them when there's a need for it, but they do not want the police to get involved in their personal affairs. And that's what the dichotomy, which often leads to problems between how the citizens view the police and how the police view the citizens that they serve. And this is the reality that often comes about. And it is the nature of the police profession itself, because on the one hand, the police are there to serve, but on the other hand, they're there to sort of deprive others of their freedom. And because of that, the police are sort of in this inherent position where what they do is always problematic, at least to a certain degree or to a certain extent in society. Now, in America, the police have different levels. We have, local police, state police, and federal police, and they are not the same. So they are different in terms of their sizes, their locations, their functions generally. They are also different in terms of the sector in which they evolve. Some of them are within the public sector, others are within the private sector. So which makes the dichotomy, or at least the relationship between the police and the agency or the community they serve, somewhat complicated or complex, because sometimes the interest of the community is not the interest of that particular police agency who is trying to fix a problem or trying to prevent a problem and whatnot. So those are important facets of policing in the United States in terms of how they deal with their problems. State police have a different way of dealing with their problems. Local police have a different way of dealing with their community, and federal police, it's even much more complicated than that, and much more complex than that. So all of these entities oftentimes make it hard for police to do their job efficiently, because there are so many social threads that can affect the police and their function. But in general, the relationship that police entities enjoy with themselves or with fellow entities can be complicated. There can be jurisdictional issues or operational issues, but it is important to understand the nature of policing in general. Because again, the police are there to enforce the law, prevent crime, and to serve, or just to maintain order, to put it this way. In a democratic society, there is a need for a balance between the need to have the police there to maintain order, to prevent crime, and to serve, but there's also a need to treat the citizenry with respect, with dignity. Granted, this is not always possible. This is not always the case, and that is why we have so much tensions in society, because certain segments of the U.S. population feel like they're targeted by the police. They're not being served by the police. They are being cornered by the police. This takes us back to the foundation, to the roots of policing in general, which, based on what I've said earlier, sort of rooted in those social issues which are racial generally, in terms of the reason the police existed in the first place. And we're going to learn in Chapter 2 the history of police, how the police came about, especially here in the United States. Regardless of the reality of police entities, they have to deal with their problems. They have to deal with the tensions, at least the social tensions they face in their community. They have to come up with policies, come up with rules and procedures to make their job easier. But they also have to grapple with issues related to training, performance, accountability. They also have to deal with issues related to having the right strategies to get the job done. Because if there's a police entity in a particular particular neighborhood, it is not supposed to be the case that crime is rising, the homicides are rising, that delinquency is rising, or violent criminal behaviors are sort of the norm. So the police are there to stop those, to maintain order. So the police must grapple with that reality. They have to come up with ways to do their job efficiently, but also safely for the police officers. Police cannot do their job when the police officers cannot operate within a safe bubble, to put it this way. But in the last few years, the police have sort of witnessed a change in terms of the landscape of the profession itself. Police entities are using technology, and because of that, police officers are sort of much more advanced in terms of the way they use drones, data, information technology to do their job, to prevent crime, to maintain order, or to enforce the law. So technology has sort of made it possible. But there are also issues related to diversity, inclusion. There are calls to have police entities that are diverse, meaning much more minority representative within the police, having women within the police. All of these are sort of issues that police entities must face in today's society. The issue of accountability has been in the forefront of the debate about policing, especially in the wake of incidents involving minorities or unarmed black men. So the idea is we cannot allow the police to police themselves. We have to have entities that oversee the police in terms of when they do, how they do, and why they do. And this is a debate because the police as an entity, it's a rather strong profession in terms of its backers, right? So it is not easy to undo facets of policing because there are so many people that have a vested interest in the police entity as a whole. So these people are going to push back against those demands by society. The idea that police could lose their capacity to do their job, there are going to be pushbacks. The idea that we need to defund the police, there are going to be pushbacks against those ideas. And in fact, we have seen pushbacks against those ideas. They have not really come to fruition, despite the fact that there were a lot of noise in society about reforming the police and whatnot. So those are some of the issues facing the police in today's society here in the United States. So this chapter lays out those in terms of how there's a need to sort of address these issues, but at the same time there's a need to be pragmatic in terms of what can be done realistically to fix the problem. See you in the next chapter.